It starts with an itch and a tingle, and then it builds and expands. And suddenly, all at once, my legs won't let me stand. I scratch till my fingers go numb.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Suicide Sucks. Now today in my camper van we've got our lovely cups of tea ready, and I've got Sammy with me today, and Sammy is going to tell us about the dark days that she had, because we always start straight in there with the dark days. Let's not, mess about with it. So could you start by telling us maybe your first memory of ever having dark days?
No, thank you for the opportunity.
Okie doke. Okay, welcome everybody to this episode of Suicide Sucks. Now, with me today, we are over in America yet again. We seem to have a lot at the moment. We have got Patrick, and Patrick's story is one of heartbreak, resilience, and redemption. Now, from a childhood filled with disappointment and identity struggles to battling depression, loss, and near-death experiences, Patrick has faced some of life's darkest challenges head-on. Patrick, like myself, also hosts a podcast where he shares his unfiltered story. Now, Patrick is dedicated to turning his pain into purpose, and his mission is very clear. No matter how broken life feels, there is always a path to healing, redemption, and hope. Something we can all agree on there. Hello, Patrick. Welcome.
Hi. I'm glad to be here. Finally, we've had some missed opportunities, but you know what? You keep pushing, you keep trying, and here we are.
Absolutely. I think it's about probably 5 months on, isn't it? But yeah, we are here. So, Patrick, I am going to start with the question that I always ask everybody that comes onto the podcast. And, you may have had lots of dark days, but there might be one in particular that stands out, and that's where we like to start. So if you could share with our listeners one of your darkest days, please.
March 19th, 2023. I was recovering from my first attempt to end my life. And during that, I found it therapeutic to start a podcast. So I was really diving deep into the subject of suicide. And what I wanted to know was why I felt it was necessary to do that to myself because of what happened. Why I felt that that was the answer. I wanted to know why. So I found it therapeutic to do these podcasts, sharing my life and my recovery and what I did to myself. And along that journey, I discovered that there's kind of a different mix of people out there that are in that unfortunate space. There's the ones that absolutely do not talk about it, and you would never know. And then there's ones that do reach out, and that's just a different type of depression and pain. But I was fascinated about the ones that don't say anything. And that's what happened to me. I didn't tell anybody I did it. I just went and did it. And of course, changed the course of my life. And so along that journey, I was going to do a podcast about Robin Williams. I was fascinated about it. Look at this man from the outside. You have a man that is absolutely on top of the world, super funny, amazing actor. But down deep inside, he was dealing with a lot of pain. And one day, so I was fascinated. His last interview was with Diane Sawyer. And in that interview, he was basically saying, this life is about helping others. This life is about kicking your ego to the curb. This life is not about you. It's about others. It's about helping each other. And I was fascinated. So I wanted to do a podcast on that subject. So it was March 19th. It was a beautiful sunny day. And I was getting ready to drive about 30 minutes south of my home to go do this podcast in the podcast room. I don't remember anything after leaving the house. I had a mimosa that morning, Sunday tradition, watched church online, gathered all my stuff, and headed down south. I don't remember doing the podcast. I don't remember getting in my car and driving on the highway. It's still to my mind, to this day, I don't remember much of anything. It was my darkest moment. I led police on a high-speed chase. I was recklessly driving in and out of traffic. I ran a sheriff off the road. They finally got me to pull over, and they were going to shoot me. And I instantly remember this part of it. I didn't want to be here anymore. I reached over and grabbed my knife and sliced my neck open, and I should not be here. I lost enough blood on the highway that literally I should be not here. But I am. And that would probably be the most darkest moment in my life. That happened just not even 2 years ago. And I've since then have dedicated my life and purpose to share that moment. But somebody told me something last night that I wanted to share with you, is that a lot of us are sharing what happened afterwards, how I've recovered, and the things that I've learned, and the things that I'm sharing with other people so that they will never have to get to that point. I was in a terrible 5-year relationship that was so mentally destructive that it all leads to something. It wasn't like one day I woke up and wanted to do that to myself. That was years in the making. Those are years in the making of abandonment and abuse and identity issues and all of these things that are wrapped up into one gigantic problem that led me there. But I find that where a lot of us are sharing the after, I want to find out from the beginning, how did I get there?
Absolutely.
Because we're always treating the after part. How do we treat the before part? How do we treat someone that's in a bad relationship and give them the tools to realize they're in a bad relationship, or they're drinking too much, or drugs, and they're using that as a crutch to get through? How do we help?
Yeah.
How do we treat the beginning?
Exactly. And it's only by knowing that you can help other people, really, because that is the crux to the whole thing. We need to get to the point where we're talking openly about it and about the after, in order to spark the conversation and the things to look out for how you got to that point. So going back for you, Patrick, obviously you had no you didn't know what you were doing at that point. So you've said that there was a culmination of things. So you can only ever see this when you look back. But what was it then? There's often the straw that breaks the camel's back that gets you to that point where you make an attempt. And there's many things, like you've said before. A lot of people think there might just be one thing. It's normally a culmination of loads of things that just build and build and build. So for you, can you pinpoint where that started, or is that just too difficult? Is it just...
No, I can. I'm glad you brought that. I'm trying to fix my internet. I apologize. Here we go. I was just about to do a podcast about why I lied. I didn't have a particularly great childhood. I was very skinny. I was bullied a lot. And back then, you just dealt with being bullied. You never really labeled it called being bullied. You just got picked on. I had massive identity issues, abandonment issues. My father was never around. My mother, God bless her for being a single mother of 3 kids and doing everything she can. But you're just kind of left in that she got remarried, and then you get kind of pushed away because then she has another child with the new husband. And I just at an early age started making up lies. But we were poor. We lived on the other side of town. I went to a private Catholic school. We were given tuition because we were poor. So I'm going to school with all of these wealthy kids. And, I automatically never fit in. So I made up things that would make me more acceptable. And that just went on through life. And my father was a figure that I always enjoyed being around, but he was never around. He would never show up during visitation, weekends or stuff like that. So it's just a combination of stuff as a child. And the first heart I've ever broken was my mother's at the age of 16, because I just felt we lived in a small town in Kansas, and my father lived in Kansas City, where I'm from. And so I just desperately wanted to be in the city, thinking that living in the city would be so much more glamorous or more exciting for me, because our small town was just duh, and I just didn't like it. I didn't fit in. And so I broke my mother's heart leaving. And I was never so disappointed in my life. Well, I take that back. I've been disappointed a lot, but that was my first huge disappointment, going and thinking that living with my father was going to be this amazing life changing thing. Instead, he was never there. And I had to learn how to live life in a public school with a whole different variety of people than what I was used to. So what did I do? I went back to my go-to, making up shit so that they would like me. I was living a lie from one point to the next point to the next point. And so it just kind of grew from there. And I changed my name because I thought maybe that would be the identity issue, or that would solve my identity. I could be this guy with this amazing last name called Lomantini, Patrick Lomantini. And then I created this big facade of being part of an Italian family. You know, even creating this environment where my mother had to actually put up with it so I wouldn't lose face. So I get married to a woman, and she knows about my name change, but that's another story. And it was just another 10 years and 4 kids later, all one gigantic lie. And when it fell apart, which it usually always does, that was my very first attempt. And that was my first visit to a psych ward. And all I did was get sick. And what I'm trying to say is, regardless of you trying to take your life, the reality of life hasn't changed it. You still lost your wife. My wife, she still took my kids. So you killing it or doing that to myself, the only thing that you hurt was you, right? So I got divorced. I moved on. Then I created this other environment. I moved back to Kansas. I was in St. Louis for 10 years or 15 years while I was married to her. I moved back to Kansas feeling amazingly defeated. Here I am starting back all over again in the place that I didn't want to be. So I created another environment. I went and got hired on as a personal trainer. So now I went from a skinny 165, 6 foot tall, to 195 pounds of muscle because I got introduced to the world of steroids.
Oh.
And if you know anything about side effects of steroids, they just feed right into depression. They feed right into anxiety. They feed right into insecurity. All of those things bundled up in a bottle. But I liked the way I looked. I was like, wow, look at me. I was dating women I never thought I had a chance at. I'm like, wow, look at me dating all these gorgeous women. Then I started male stripping.
Oh, wow.
Because I found a way to make some great money by showing off my body and being around a bunch of women. But realize, okay, so for that short 30 minutes of dancing, I was the guy. I was the center of attention. And then after that, you're back to being yourself in your own little world, in your own mind of depression. And in mind, here's what's really interesting. Is I never knew I was depressed. I just felt that was just how I feel. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't identify the feeling, but I've had it for so long. I just felt it was just part of my DNA. That's just who I am.
Yeah.
So I did that for 7 years. And I paid so my dad was a cosmetologist. He did hair for a while when he was younger. And my aunt was a hairstylist. So I thought, you know what? I want to do that too. I better do it before it's too late. So literally my dancing, now this sounds so cliche, but my dancing paid for my school.
Brilliant. Wow.
So I became a hairstylist at the age of 36, thinking that that was going to be my answer. So I started cutting hair, but my problem was that I was sleeping with all my clients. And that's not a good policy. You're not supposed to do that because, obviously it doesn't work out and they're not going to come back and get their haircut. So,
Yeah.
you're messing up your whole financial situation. So I finally learned that. So I wanted to create another environment to where Patrick had all the affirmation that he needed. And so during cutting hair, what was so important to me, and I also love dogs. So I'm a big dog lover. So I tried to find a way to marry my passion to do hair and to give back to animal rescue across the country. So I created this company called Bark Aid. It was inspired by Willie Nelson's Farm Aid, where he would have these big concerts and raise money for farmers in need. And so what I was doing these big haircut-a-thons all across the country and then giving the money to a local animal rescue. So I did that for 7 years. And it was amazing. I've been to all 50 United States, been to all 50 states, 7 years in a row. I did like 7,000 haircuts. I raised almost $700,000.
Oh my goodness.
But I would be cutting hair for 12 hours in one state and then go to the next and do it again. And I was on the road for probably 4 months. I lived literally like a gypsy. But unbeknownst to me, I was adding to my depression. I was adding to my anxiety. I was adding to my sorrows because what I was doing on the road, now that I look back, I was looking for happiness. And I thought I was going to find happiness in a zip code. If you're not happy with who you are, you can never be happy anywhere. You can never make another person happy. If you don't love yourself, how can I possibly love you? And so all I was doing, when I mentioned the dancing, remember, and for that short little time, I was I was the center of attention. And that's what I did is I just transferred it to a larger level when I was traveling with Bark Aid. So what happened was for 12 hours, Patrick's the center of attention. Who is this guy traveling all over the country doing hair and then giving all the money away? I've got to meet this guy. This guy sounds so amazing. So for those 12 hours, I was the center of attention. Let's get to know this guy. And then guess what? Back in my car, driving to the next place, depressed, anxious, tired. And when you're tired, all of those things get amplified. So what was interesting is that all across the country, I was the center of attention. But when I got home, it was like the biggest dud you can imagine. It was just like no big deal. And I just felt so frustrated that my own hometown can't even rally around me. But everywhere else around the country, they did. And so that was a massive depression for me. And I asked a very good friend of mine, her name's Stream. I said, why is it that all across the country, I get all this amazing attention, but when I come home, it's like, eh. She said, well, Jesus was the Messiah when he traveled, but when he was home, he was just a carpenter. And I was like, wow, that mind blown right there. So I don't know if I've answered your question or not, but
no, you have. And do you know what? That whole concept of loving yourself and being okay with who you are, I think is absolutely key. I hear so many people who are struggling with suicidal thoughts or depression, and a lot of the time they're saying things like, I can't provide for my family, or I'm not good enough for them, or I can't make them happy. Like it's your responsibility to make these people happy when you're not even happy or comfortable with who you are yourself. And that's
Amen.
definitely where it has got to start. Absolutely.
And I've realized one thing that was probably the most real. I've never been in love because I've realized I've never loved myself. So how could I possibly be in love with anybody if I don't know who I am, if I'm not happy with who I am? Because I don't want to be anybody else other than me. And it took me 18 months to finally be able to realize I like who I am. I like where I've been because all of those things that I just spoke about have made me who I am today. And one of the phrases that I was using for myself for coping was when I died on that highway, I like to refer to it as the old Patrick died on that highway so that the new Patrick could live the life that I was supposed to be living right now. And that's been a struggle for me because I feel like the old Patrick is trying to tempt me to do things that I shouldn't do, or the old Patrick is still out there. And one of my therapy coaches said, what you need to do is you can't have a positive without a negative. You can't have yin without yang. So he says, instead of trying to convince yourself that the old Patrick is dead, recognize that that Patrick is still there, but he's not welcome anymore. This is the new Patrick.
Love it.
Yeah. So that's really helped me. So my friend told me, she goes, Patrick, don't say this to me ever again. The old Patrick did not die. He grew. He grew into a new, beautiful person. And so in a weird sort of way, I mean, I've got not trying to get my thoughts right here. A lot of people like my friend Kevin Hines, who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge in 2000. He said he had instant regret as soon as he let go. I don't regret what I did because it's made me who I am today. Because I look back and I'm wondering, do I still wish I was still married to her? Or what could I have done different? Or the thing that was so frustrating why I did what I did to myself and stuck the knife in my neck is when I met my wife on my travels, I was like, finally, I have met someone I can be completely honest. I finally found someone I can tell my life about. I told her everything, all the stuff I just told you. I was like, I finally found someone that I can be totally vulnerable. And she used it all against me. I was so devastated. On January of 2023, she just crushed my world. And I had to leave. And I was like, wow, I thought I had the right one. I was finally honest, and I was just never enough for her. And so when that March 19th day happened, I just wanted the pain to go away. And I think a lot of us out there are dealing with amazing pain between our ears. And I think I like what Kevin put it as brain pain. You know, like if you have a problem with your liver, you go to the hospital, people send flowers. If you have a problem with your heart, you go to the hospital, people send flowers. If you have a problem with your brain and you go to see a therapist, or if you're in a psych ward, nobody's coming to see you.
Mm. Yeah.
So there's a terrible stigma out there with people with, dealing with these problems.
There is. And yet, that whole thing going on in your brain, everybody has to deal with. And it must just be that some people can not listen to that negative chatter and that incessant, negative voices that go off in your head, because, we do all have that. And it's obviously about how you manage that, really, and
Mm-hmm.
and not give weight to it. I mean, it's like muscle memory. It's like going to the gym and things, isn't it? It's you've got to literally train, just like with any illness, with any organ or whatever. You've got to retrain it to be on the right wavelength, almost, isn't it?
Yes.
I'd like to take you back to when you were saying when you were younger and at school and things, and you were talking about the lies. That's something that is obviously something crucial to your upbringing and the choices that you made, because
It's
obviously to
interesting.
lie is a
Yeah,
choice, isn't it?
absolutely. Yeah.
What is there anything, like, if you could go back and to the past and talk to yourself then,
Mhm.
what could have changed that? How could you have not gone down that route of the lies, which
I think a lot of it's parenting. I mean, I don't want to blame my mother, and I can't really blame my dad. I mean, they just are who they are. Um, I think a lot of it though does go to parenting and being able to talk to your parents about how you feel. But I never, ever once ever felt I had that option to
Yeah.
talk to my parent. My stepfather, horrible. And definitely not somebody I could talk to. My dad was absent, so I didn't have that. But if I could talk to myself now as a child, I would say, just take a breath, just be you. You know, not everybody.
Mm,
So when I was young and all throughout those 55 years, I wanted everybody to like. And the only thing that you're going to get out of something like that is run yourself into the ground. You just run yourself ragged. And I just felt like if someone didn't like me, I had to find out why. It drove me crazy, very anxious about it. And it was one of those things I would love to wrap my arms around myself as a young child and say, you know what, you cannot please everyone.
yeah.
And not everybody's going to be your friend. And not everybody was meant to be your friend. And
Yeah.
that was hard for me.
I think that's key. I think you talk about parenting and things, and I think that that is important because, there could be somebody listening to this episode, for example, who is concerned about their teenage child or something. I mean, I've got a teenager, and one of the things that I've learned is that you need to be heard. And sometimes
Right.
as parents, because we're older, we feel we have experienced a lot of things. Often we forget that when you're a teenager and you want to be liked by everyone, and if you're not liked by everyone, it is such a massive big deal. We need to
Hmm.
be heard, and you're right, those conversations need to be had, and our children do need to be heard and have their feelings validated, even if to us they
Right.
might seem a little over the top or being sensitive, and I think that is something that, as all parents could take on board.
I think it's kind of I had a 2 hour conversation with a very good friend of mine last night about it. And a lot of it comes from abandonment. And whenever I would ever like later in life have a relationship and it didn't work out, that abandonment hurt so bad. And it was one of those, it just would put me into this depressive, anxious spiral. Like, why did it not work out? Why did you do this to me? Why? And it brought me right back to the crux of it all. I never felt like I was good enough. I never
Yeah.
did. And so I am enough. And if you don't see my value, then you're just not my people. That's the attitude and the belief that I have now. And it took me 55 years to get there, but I'm glad I finally did because I'm living a very happy life. I'm excited about what's happening in my life. Literally, I lost everything because of that decision. I spent 4 months in jail contemplating why I'm not good enough because that high speed chase that I mentioned to you, I created a lot of problems that day on the highway. And I created a lot of legal issues on the highway. So I was facing 6 years in jail. And so just add insult to injury, my depression was just, I felt like a dead man walking.
Mm. So
And
did you get any help with anything?
you know what was interesting is I spent 10 days. This is how messed up the system is. I don't know what the system's like in your area, but I was in 10 days at the psych ward. I met a few doctors and they put me on some medications to kind of balance my mood out, blood pressure stuff like that. And I felt good. I was feeling good. So they came to arrest me and they threw all my medication because you can't take that medication in jail. So I'm like, so immediately I go from feeling good and I had 150 stitches in my neck, not stitches, but staples. So I looked like this horrific monster and they shackle me up, take me to jail. And I meet my lawyer about a week or two later. And I'm isolated in what they call the hole. I'm all by myself because of the staples and So my lawyer comes. This is the most amazing part of the whole story. He's not very nice to me. He looks at me and he says, I need you to wrap your head around the idea that you're going to do 6 years in jail. You have 3 felonies. You drove 115 miles an hour. You're going to lose your driver's license. He goes, you just need to wrap your head around this. So I'm trying to ask him questions. He's cutting me off. He's just not good. So add insult to injury. Again, I'm more depressed than ever. And I'm literally in jail contemplating banging my head off the concrete floor hard enough to end this thing. But you have to realize I've attempted 3 times. I'm not apparently really good at this. So, what's amazing is a lot of people have done a lot less to themselves, and they're not here anymore. So because of that, I'm massively grateful. So that's what my friend at work said. He goes, I think you need a new hobby. You're not really good at that, Patrick. So
I think he's right, definitely.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I don't know how to wrap my head around the idea of going to jail or prison for hurting myself. And well, I did create a problem. They shut the whole highway down. I don't remember being put in a helicopter. I don't remember being flown to have surgery. I don't remember anything. Crazy. So anyway, about 3 weeks later, my lawyer comes back to see me and he says, I'm going to get you off on temporary insanity. And I'm like, how are you going to do that? He goes, I read your police report. And it looks like you just had a really bad day. It's like a whole different lawyer. It's like, it looks like you just had a really bad day. And I'm like, I'm going to have you talk to a therapist and he's going to interview you and we'll see. I said, okay. So I waited another 2 weeks to speak to this guy. He asks me the regular questions like, what year is it? Who's the president of the United States? Blah, blah. And about a week later, my lawyer contacts me and he says, we did it. That based on what this doctor said, that on that day, I had no recollection of right or wrong, no concept of it. And on that day, I was temporarily insane because nobody sane sticks a knife in their neck. And so this is the most beautiful part and the reason why I'm even here talking to you. They said that we will drop all charges if you agree to 1 year of therapy. I said, sign me up.
Exactly. Oh my!
I think everybody should have therapy. I
words.
mean, it's self-discovery is amazing, and I learned so much about myself going through that therapy. I finished my year of therapy back in June, and I've just been on the fast track of sharing my story, helping others, trying to find out what's going on in their life so they never have to get there. It's been an amazing journey because I've had so much feedback. I'm sure you have too. So many people messaging me and responding to videos because I have been unfiltered. I've been raw. I've been transparent, accountable. There's not an aspect of my life that I haven't tried to share because I think that is so massively important and it's been therapeutic for me. What's amazing to me is I've run across this gentleman who is a movie producer for Monarch Media. I did his hair. He heard my story. We sat down. We've talked for hours. Now we're in the middle of a docuseries called Surviving Myself. And we're going to have 8 episodes of other survivors like myself. I've run across so many amazing people. But what's amazing about it is it's not just the fact that you committed or attempted, but the fact that you survived and what are you doing with it now? I think that is the key because my story, your stories, their stories would all just be sad stories if you didn't do something with it.
Absolutely.
So it could be like this. Oh, remember Patrick? Remember, oh, poor guy. No, but now Patrick's this amazing new person that loves himself and now is sharing that love with everybody else to try and have a better life. And it's not just about trying to avoid suicide.
Mm-hmm.
It's just living a good life. Live a good life because you'll never get to that point if you just have a good life. You just live good. And what does that mean, living good? Reading books, having good people around you, having good conversations, working out, taking care of yourself, eating well, avoiding lots of alcohol, just all of those things. And I know it sounds cliche, but it's like, how you need a balanced life. I'm not a balanced person. I'm an extremely extreme person. but embracing that and knowing that about myself, that way I can now recognize, okay, I don't want to go that way. I don't want to go this way. So anyway,
Yeah.
back to you.
No, no, this is what it's all about, Patrick. We're here to hear your story. So yeah, whoops. But yeah, you're so right. I mean, it's all about what you do with it and where you go from here. I
Right.
mean, so many people will be listening to this and will resonate with loads of the things that you've mentioned in terms of, even from potentially being a child and creating, lies and, fabricating their identity to actually
Right.
feel alive almost, and it's all about how you recognize that. And I mean, do you now? So obviously, did you say it had been 18 months since your?
So that happened in March, and I was in jail until the beginning of July. So I've only really started my journey and my recovery since July of 23.
Yeah.
So in July, it'll be my 2 year anniversary of being released. And then next month in March will be my 2 year anniversary of my new life.
Wow. I mean, that's
Yeah.
quite fresh and raw in my experience of interviewing people. That's a fast track to improvement. I mean,
Well,
it's
yeah, and if
amazing.
I have to I cannot get the light on this correctly. I apologize. I'm trying
You,
to get this.
from my end, you look good. You look
Okay.
good.
But thank you. Yes, and that was one of the first things that my therapist mentioned, that things are moving really fast for me, for something so traumatic to have happened not long ago. Like, for example, I mentioned Kevin Hines, and there's another wonderful woman um, that's been on the, I'm trying to remember her. Why is her name all of a sudden a blank? Kristen. I don't know if you know Kristen Anderson, young woman who laid herself down on railroad tracks. And her and Kevin have been on the speaking market for 20 years sharing their story. And here I am, just 18 months fresh, already sharing my story on a large platform like them. And I've had that conversation with Kevin, and he's like, that's just amazing that you're able to. What's amazing about that, though, I have to share and say, is the horrific things that we did to ourselves, like Kristen and then Kevin and myself and another girl named Emma and another man named John that I'm working with, that we're so fortunate to be so intact mentally, spiritually, uh, orally speaking, that we're
Yeah.
able to share our story in such an articulate way. That's just a blessing in itself.
Yeah.
Because, like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of people out there that have done a lot less to themselves and they're no longer here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's my obligation to share my story. And so
Yeah.
for me to have an opportunity to have a book and then also the docu-series, it's just an amazing blessing that I hope can become a movement, if you will, or at least help other people have the ability to speak about it. And I think there's so
Exactly.
many, right? No one wants to, as soon as you mention the S word, so my spiritual coach, his daughter unfortunately passed away, and how, it doesn't matter, but it really bothered him. And so I couldn't speak with him this freely at first because the S word was like a trigger for
Mm.
him, and sometimes, but I don't know if you know a guy named David Goggins, he
Mm.
marathon guy. He lives here in this local area that I'm in. He's a very big motivator, but he's very hardcore. He's military and
Mm-hmm.
special ranger, all that stuff. And his philosophy on triggers is one that has really helped me. And when, like, for example, there would be a song that my wife liked, and it would trigger me into this bad depressive mode and anxiety. And so I'm like, but his philosophy, so I would turn it off, right? I would stop listening to it, right?
Yeah.
That's what a therapist would tell you to do, right?
Yeah.
But David Goggins says, fuck triggers. I like that song. I'm not going to stop listening to that song because it makes me think of her. So that's just two different thoughts and processes. So that was huge for me because
Yeah.
I'm not going to allow that book or that movie or something to change the way I feel.
Mm,
And I think triggers are a very important part of therapy and healing, recognizing them.
definitely.
But what's interesting, he went through a very similar course that David Goggins is part of. And so now he's exactly where I'm at on my level with triggers. So he couldn't look at a barn because that's where he found his daughter. So he avoided driving through the country because he knew he was going to see a barn. I said, you can't avoid driving through the country. You got to get over it. So he finally did. And now I'm happy for him. But everybody's journey is different.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I've had to recognize, that a lot of I had this conversation with Kevin, and he goes, I think you need to turn your language into safe language. And you and I talked about this right before the podcast. Is like certain words and certain things that we say can't necessarily be said because of policies or how it might affect somebody. But then again, I didn't like the conversation because of one specific thing. And it's been the one thing that's been the constant throughout my entire life. Changing who I am in order to satisfy someone else and what they want me to be. So that was changing me to satisfy him and the rest of the world out there. David Goggins has millions of followers. He's looked up to and people love his philosophy. That guy says the F word more than any drunk sailor you could ever imagine. But that's his platform. I'm not saying I'm going to go out and run around and say the F word all the time. All I'm saying is I don't want to be anybody else but me.
Yeah.
Be you unapologetically, be you raw. And if nobody likes it, then find another person that does.
Absolutely. I love that philosophy. It's a great philosophy. And I think that it shows, it shines through you as a human being. And I was going to mention about triggers because it's interesting that you said about, everybody has a different route, a different path, because I've interviewed people that believe wholeheartedly, yes, you can avoid your triggers, and that's the way to cope. You avoid them. But then, similar to you, other people have said, no, you need to recognize them, process it, accept it, and deal with the triggers.
Mm-hmm.
So there is, it's such a complex
It really is.
thing.
There's the avoidance and then there's the direct,
Yeah.
and I just found it healthier for me because it reminded me of my entire life. I avoided everything. I avoided the reality of life and created a facade. And that was my way of avoidance to deal with my abandonment and my lack of my insecurity. And so when I was going through therapy and they were teaching you how to avoid your triggers, I felt like that was me all over again.
Mm,
That I don't want to be like that. I don't want to
mm,
be, I feel like triggers can be a prison, a personal prison where you're trapping yourself because you're trying to avoid this, you're trying to avoid that, and you're trying to avoid all these other things that remind you of this person or that. And it's like, that's almost an unrealistic way for me to live
mm.
because I'm a very extrovert type of person and I like being out and about. And but I've recognized certain things that are not healthy for me. I had a recent relationship. It was very short, but it didn't end well. So, and it instantly brought back the dark moment that I had on March 19th. It instantly made me feel unwelcome. It instantly made me feel abandoned. It instantly made me feel like I was not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went right back to that feeling that I had, and I was able to recognize it and realize, hey, Patrick, come on. There's people out there that love you. People are counting on you. Make a phone call if you need to. Just get through it. And sometimes that's all you need is just to throw it out there to tell someone about it, and you can move on with your life.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. So, on that note, I've been trying to spread the word at the moment about having somebody that you can call, but you message them or ask them the question, do you have 8 minutes? Have you seen that?
Oh,
It's been
no.
shared. I forget who it was originally, and it's all
I like
about
that.
it's like having a code And basically, if somebody were to ring you and say, have you got 8 minutes? It basically means, oh, this person needs me now. This person
Yes.
needs to
I
talk.
like that.
Yeah. Because when would you ever say that? We often phone a mate or message a mate saying, you're right, I'm feeling a bit rubbish at the moment, but it skirts around the issue. And, some people have messages and their days are busy, they don't get back to the person until potentially it's too late. But that phrase, do you have 8 minutes? It's like, it says more. So I'm on a mission to get everybody to have somebody in their life that they can call their kind of 8 minute
I like
eight
that a
minute
lot.
contact. Yeah.
I'll share that with my friend Deanna. I say Deanna, her name's Dina, sorry. She was the one that told me about how we're always trying to fix the end. She says we need to find a way to fix the beginning and find out why we're getting there. But I told her what I just told you about my suicidal thoughts after this short little relationship. And she got very upset about it. And I guess I've always internalized things where she's like, why did you not reach out to me? I'm very upset about this. And so I guess we underestimate how much people do care about you.
Definitely.
I think we underestimate because I think we still have that I can handle it mode. I don't, I'm okay mode.
Yeah.
And actually you're not. And it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
It's okay not to be okay. It's okay not
I
to be
know.
okay.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's, yeah, so true that we
Hmm.
underestimate. We all know ourselves that if we had a friend who was suffering, and they didn't reach out, it was just so frustrating, because, you know, you need an 8 minute mate. That's what
Hmm.
is crux to it, I think.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
And you need to have that person that's able to listen to you. And that's one of the things I've never had in my life, especially in my own family, is that I was never able to speak to someone without it being judged.
mm,
I just need you to listen to me. I don't want you to fix me. I'm not asking you for the answer. I just want you to listen to me. And I think that's why a lot of people don't reach out because you're going to judge me. I don't want to hear you say, I told you so. I don't want
hmm
to hear, told you that was a bad person in your life. I don't want to hear any of that stuff. I just want you to listen to me
yeah,
so I can move on and get it out of my voice.
yeah.
So,
But
yeah.
that's all about communication as well, though, isn't it? And the language you use. People aren't psychic. So sometimes I saw this to do with it was relationship advice actually, and it was basically saying if you've got something on your mind and you're talking to your partner or whatever, you need to actually say to them, "Now, I don't want you to fix this. I just want you to listen." So you need to actually say that first, or you need to say, I don't want you to just listen. I need you to fix this. To at
Right.
least let the person know, what are you wanting from me? And again, it's the communication and it's giving ourselves permission to say those things.
Yeah. That's so true. I saw this couple, and you may have seen it. It was viral for a while, but they have this way of talking to each other after a long day of work. And one will say, the wife would say, "Where are you at today, baby?" He's like, "I'm at 50%." She goes, "Oh, I can carry the other 50. We got this." Or he could say, "I've had a bad day. I'm only at 10%. You're going to have to carry me today." She's like, "I got you," or vice versa. And I like that open communication. Where are you right now mentally? Where are you?
Yeah, that
Where are
percentage
you
is
talking?
quite good. Yeah.
And you got to realize that I know we're talking about, attempted, the S word, and we're talking about depression and anxiety. But what is such a big key and part of that is the health of your relationship or whatever that is. I mean, your spouse and you, that's what happened to me. I mean, all those years of my depression and anxiety, which I never knew, suddenly I'm around it a lot because all of her family was taking medication for depression. And so, of course, when I tried to understand it, I was shut down because you don't have depression. You don't know what we're going through. So you're not allowed to really talk to us about this. I'm like, wow, okay. That's just like, okay, it's on you. Maybe I've got it, but I'm not knowing because I'm not allowed to talk about it. But it's the health of a relationship. Do you know one of the fastest growing segments of suicide are middle-aged men like me, because they lose their identity in a relationship. They go from you went from an alpha male blazing the trail, you get married, she beats you down to beta Barry, and then your whole life is about taking care of them, the dogs, the house, going to work, coming home, paying bills. You just get lost in the shuffle and you're not building each other up anymore. So when it's all taken away from you in such a grand fashion like mine, you're lost. You're like, wait a minute, I don't have a house anymore. My wife left me. There's no closure. We've never had a conversation. She just divorced me while I was in jail. And it's just like, I don't even know who I am. I never knew who I was, but I certainly don't know now. And so I'm not alone. I've had a lot of men call me, talk to me, message me, dude, that's exactly what's happening to me. And I'm able to get them through it, because doing what I did was not the answer. Going back to what I said before, let's say I survived, or no, let's say I didn't. The result is the same. She still left you. You still don't have a house. You still don't have a car. You still don't have dogs. It doesn't matter. So why not stay alive and keep going?
Absolutely.
But
thank
when you're in
goodness.
that dark space, you think it's the movie producer that I told you about. He told me something very interesting. When you're in that dark space, you think you're the only one going through. When you're in that dark space, nobody understands you. When you're in that dark space, it's all about Patrick. But do you realize how many lives I affected that day? Every cop that was on the road, the helicopter, the ambulance, the hundreds of cars on the highway that were stopped because of my action, and all the people, the hospital. I affected hundreds of people's lives because of my selfish action. Suicide is such a permanent solution to something so massively temporary.
It really is.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
So bring us to today then, Patrick.
Yes.
Do you have your suicidal thoughts just completely gone, or do you still battle with depression? Where are you at in terms of those kinds of feelings?
Great question. I talked about that yesterday, and it's the woman Dina that I mentioned to you. She deals in alcohol and drug abuse recovery, and so I think a lot of times in alcoholism, you're always going to be an alcoholic. So you know how to manage that, and I don't need that drink. So I asked her, I said, is it normal for me to have these thoughts? And she says, absolutely. You are a suicide survivor. I don't think I'm ever going to ever not have the thoughts of suicide, but I know not to act on it. I know that it's just an emotional wave. I know this is a very basic therapeutic way of explaining it, but we go through these emotional waves of anxiety and depression, and we're always trying to make a decision at the top of the wave when we're the most anxious, we're the most depressed. And if we would just take a breath and step back and let that wave crash, we would realize that what you got all upset about really amounted to nothing.
Yeah.
And so I use that a lot lately. The relationship that just didn't work out, and some other things in my life that I'm struggling with. But I realize it's a temporary struggle. You'll get through it, and it's very healthy. It feels good to recognize those things. So actually, yes, I do still have those thoughts. I think I'm always anxious because I'm a high energy kind of guy, but I also realize that I can manage that now. It's really about having the mental tools and understanding that you can get through this, and you've got people you can call. Because the day that I did what I did to myself, I was supposed to have a 4:00 phone call with a buddy of mine named Tad. He's a good, wonderful, probably my best friend on this planet. And he's like, I called him the day before. This is really blowing your mind. I called him the day before because I was having those thoughts. I said, I could really have a call. I would really like to talk to you tomorrow. And he goes, good, I'll call you right after church. He didn't call, and I did what I did to myself. And so they confiscated the phone and everything. That all happened at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. When I did what I did, it happened at 4 o'clock. When I got my phone back, I looked at missed phone calls, and it was his phone call I missed at 4 o'clock. I'm not blaming him or upset. And if he would have called maybe 2 hours earlier, would it have made a difference? I don't know. But I told him that story, and he feels horrible. But I didn't tell him the story to make him feel horrible.
No. And you wouldn't be where you are now.
Exactly. I'm glad it all happened. It all happened. I'm very, very fortunate. I wear my scar well, and I'm happy to share it. My point is this. It's like, I love the, do you have 8 minutes? Because that could be the difference in everything. Like, for example, they finally have put some nets up on some local bridges so people would stop jumping off. It took Kevin Hines 20 years to get San Francisco to put a net up on the Golden Gate Bridge. Okay.
I can't believe that that's not been done before. I can't believe that.
Right. There's a bridge here in town called the Natchez Strait Bridge, and it's called Suicide Bridge because kids have been jumping off of it because of various reasons. So here's my point. So let's say I'm suicidal and I want to go jump off a bridge, and I go to the bridge and I realized there's a net there. Well, maybe I'll try tomorrow. Just that moment of interruption makes all the difference in the world, whether it's a phone call, whether it's you realizing it's just that little bit.
Yeah.
So my friend told me this because I feel like I'm trying to save everybody. And she said, you can't save them all, save who you can. So I felt like I had to turn my life completely around in order for me to accomplish what I've accomplished. And she says, think of yourself and your life as a big ship, and you're headed that direction. You don't have to turn the entire ship around for it not to get. What she's trying to say is all you got to do is just change something just a little bit, and where you go is going to be completely different. That's all you got to do. And so I've been using that a lot lately in helping people and realizing they don't have to change everything just a little.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love that. So just to bring it to an end now, because we have been chatting for almost an hour now, Patrick.
It just goes by so quick.
I know. What is in the world? What's in your life for the next year? What plans have you got? What can you share with us?
I'm super excited. What's interesting is that I mentioned to you earlier, I lost everything. I was incarcerated for 4 months, so my credit went to crap. 3 things saved my life. My van that I sleep in, I had a gym membership, and I had a place to work. So those 3 things were what kept me going. I had a place to sleep, I had a place to take a shower and work out, and I had a place to work to make money. So I've been on this journey of 18 months of rebuilding my life completely from the ground up. So I've graduated from sleeping in my van to sleeping at a hotel. So in July, I'll have a new home and I'll have a new car. So, I mean, it's just one step at a time. And so that is happening. The docuseries with Monarch Media is called Surviving Myself. He thinks it's going to be with either Angel Studios or very well could be on the Hulu platform. So we're excited about that. I'm excited to get on stage soon and start talking and sharing my story across the country, as well as I'm being interviewed with a ghostwriter soon about a possible book. So I'm excited about that. There's a lot of good, positive things. I've always wanted to share my life, and I'm excited to share the real Patrick with people across the country and the world and everybody out there on your podcast.
Absolutely. It's all very exciting. And I will be sure to drop all the links for following you on social media and things. But Patrick, thank you so much for joining us today on Suicide Sucks.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
It starts with an itch and a tingle, and then it builds and expands. And suddenly, all at once, my legs won't let me stand. I scratch till my fingers go numb.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Suicide Sucks. Now today in my camper van we've got our lovely cups of tea ready, and I've got Sammy with me today, and Sammy is going to tell us about the dark days that she had, because we always start straight in there with the dark days. Let's not, mess about with it. So could you start by telling us maybe your first memory of ever having dark days?
No, thank you for the opportunity.